Semantics is the study of the meaning of words and phrases in language. In HTML, semantic elements are those in which the element name provides some meaning to the content of the element. For example, the IMG element is a semantic element because the content of that element, an image, is clearly defined for the browser. Non-semantic elements in HTML have names that provide no meaning about the content of the element. Div and span elements are examples of non-semantic elements. Consider the B and H1 elements. The B element also has no semantic meaning. Yes, we know the contents will be bold, but we do not know the meaning of those contents. On the other hand, the H1 element does have semantic meaning. Browsers can expect that developers will use this tag as a level 1 heading. Semantic elements provide consistency in site structure and code readability. More importantly, semantic elements are used to improve search algorithms. For instance, a search engine will parse the search terms and compare those terms to content inside of particular elements, such as the title element and the H1 elements. Using semantic elements wisely will help your sites be found on the internet. Given the number of websites competing for attention, search engine optimization, or SEO, is enormously important. Using semantic meaning is just one of many strategies used to improve your site's visibility. HTML5 introduced several semantic elements that may be often used in place of the generic div element. To demonstrate the use of these elements, I have created a homepage for a must-see TV website along with an external style sheet. To work along, you may download these files under the video. Opening the HTML page in a browser, you can see I did not spend too much time making the site beautiful. Still, it has the basic structure of many websites with a heading at the top, a few navigational items, some content, and a footer. Open up both files in an editor. In the index.html page, there is a link to the CSS page. There is a div with an ID of wrapper around everything on the page. There is an H1 element being used for the heading text of the page. There is a div with an ID of nav that contains the links to other pages on the site. The first link for critics simply links to the current directory, so will display the index.html page. So the critics page that we are working on here is being used as the home page for the site. The other pages have not yet been created, so clicking on them will result in a file not found error. There is a div that holds all the content unique to this page. In this content div is a level 2 heading, level 3 headings, and paragraphs, which include links to some of my favorite television shows. At the bottom is one more div with an ID of footer. In the CSS, there are many styles already being applied. Notice the only style applied to the wrapper ensures that the width of the page is never less than 400 pixels. Looking back at the page, when the window is resized to be less than 400 pixels wide, a scroll bar appears. The reason I chose 400px as a minimum width for the page was to ensure that navigation items would stay in one horizontal line. Now let's get busy modifying the HTML code to utilize semantic elements. Add a header element around the H1 element. The header element specifies a header for a document or a section. In this case, the header only has a level 1 heading inside of it, but you could imagine that a header might include an image for a logo, smaller text under the heading for a tagline, and so forth. Change the div with an ID of nav to a nav element. Be sure to change the corresponding close div to a close nav. Change the div with an ID of content to a main element. Be sure to change the corresponding close div to a close main. And change the div with an ID of footer to a footer element. After putting in the close footer, you should see another benefit of using a variety of elements in place of the div element. Even with good indentation habits, using many div elements will make it difficult to quickly see which close div tags correspond to which div tags. There is no semantic element appropriate for the div with an ID of wrapper, so we will leave that as a generic div. After you save and refresh the page, you will see that many of the styles are no longer being applied. Of course, if you change elements in HTML, you need to update the CSS to use appropriate identifiers. The body, wrapper div, and H1 elements were not changed. The nav div was changed to a nav element, so remove the hashtag in front of the nav for the next 3 styles. The content div was changed to a main element, so change the hashtag content to main for the 3 relevant styles. You may wonder why the syntax highlighting in my version of Sublime Text is displaying main in white instead of pink. This is likely because this element has less browser support and so was not defined by Sublime as an HTML element. Looking at the reference for the main element on W3 Schools, you can see that all current browsers now support the element. However, notice that version 12 was the first version of IE to provide support. Older versions do not. Note, IE through version 11 refers to Internet Explorer, and IE 12 and beyond refers to the Internet Edge browser that Microsoft developed to replace Explorer. So in this case, all versions of the Internet Explorer browser will not support the element. Compare the support of the main element to the support of the header element. Here we see that even Internet Explorer has supported this element since version 9. W3 Schools does provide workarounds to teach older browsers to handle HTML5 correctly, but with the usage of Internet Explorer declining, I am choosing not to spend time on this. With the end of Internet Explorer, web developers everywhere are celebrating. Consistent browser support is arguably better than ever before. Getting back to the CSS code, I suspect the next version of Sublime Text will recognize the main element. Lastly, the footer div was changed to a footer element, so remove the hashtag in front of footer. After you save and refresh, your style should now be restored. W3 Schools provides a list of all semantic tags introduced with HTML5. Some of these are very common. For instance, the article element is intended for self-contained content that should be possible to read independently from the rest of the website. This layout example shows how section and aside elements may be used. The page also provides examples of each of the semantic elements in use. For instance, you can scroll down the page a bit to see a typical example of the figure and fig caption elements in use. For now, my friends, this is all I have to say about semantic elements.